had me at Cello, Cello. You had me at Cello. You had me at Cello. Oh, you had me at Cello. Good evening, everybody. 5 o'clock on a Friday again. Time for Cello Chat. And this week is our 75th episode, a very special landmark. And with me, a very special guest, Robert deMaine, Principal Cellist of the LA Philharmonic. Bob, how are you doing?
I'm pretty well. I'm still above ground. That every day that I'm above ground counts. So that's great. I'm looking forward to this too. I love nerding out with another cellist more than anything. More than anything. So I'm like first ballot Hall of Fame nerd, the Comic-Con of like cello with our, like Bill Burr says, our Hulk shirts and our Acme.
Wow.
Sorry, you might have to like edit that out. I have no idea, but whatever.
I love this. My mind is racing at the possibilities.
Oh, you're gonna you wait.
All right.
I'll try to keep it PG-13.
Well, I'd like to begin for our audience sake to recommend your everything, checking out all of your performances that are available, for example, on your website, your interview with Hilary Hahn. And in fact, I was thinking, well, maybe I can refer people to that bio that you gave, but that was 13 years ago. I can't believe
that's back in the Pleistocene, before the earth cooled.
And
man.
Sorry, I was going to say, and then
No.
the more recent interview with the Stand Partners for Life.
That was fun. We talked for like 2.5, 3 hours, and they had to like chop it up and make it into a, that little vignette about working at the ice cream place, Brahms.
Yes.
And I was an absolute disaster working there, and I got a cherry soda all over people and got fired. I got fired from selling women's shoes. I got fired from a hamburger joint. I got fired from so many places. Just detailing cars. I ruined some window tint. Bye, you're fired. Ooh, that was really bad. Anyway, no aptitude for anything other than music. I can ride a bike.
Extreme aptitude there, though. So if you wouldn't mind giving your bio again, like how did you get from when you first were above ground to where you are today?
Well, let's see. I come from a long line. I'm this weird guy that every family has. I'm into genealogy. So I know my family history back to the caves that we crawled out of, that we dragged our knuckles out of. And I come from a long line of people who chopped down trees on my dad's side and people who made things out of wood on my mom's side. So they're a bunch of woodworkers from Germany, which is now, Prussia, Poland on my mom's side. And on my dad's side, they're French Canadian. So there are a lot of loggers and people who did lots of stuff with trees. And so each side of my family was musical. My dad's side was more of the rustic kind. They played fiddle. They did a lot of square dances and reels and all that stuff that they did up in Quebec and Ontario. And my mom's side, they were a little bit more buttoned up, and they came from the city of Danzig, now Gdańsk in Poland, and they came to Chicago, and they all had music lessons, and so it was important to them that their children had musical education. So we all took piano and another instrument, and I wanted to play the trumpet, and I have no aptitude for that. I'm secretly want to be a trumpet. I want that big of a sound. I have decibel envy like every other cellist, but I know I tend to meander. But okay, so when I was born, I'm the baby of the family by 7 years. So I've got 10 years older, 9 years, and 7 years. 3 sisters, so 3 more mommies. My mom played the cello. She was an excellent cellist. She studied at DePaul University in Chicago, and she played It was different for women back then. The opportunities weren't as plentiful, and she wasn't as encouraged. She got discouraged, in her late 20s, and she also was what she called referred to herself as a shop girl at Marshall Field. She worked at Marshall Field, and she just quit the cello when she met my dad, and the piece that she was working on when she quit was Shlomo, and that's the first piece that I fell in love with when I was a kid, when I put the record player on. So that's another story that's like indelible, like that is a moment that is just like etched in. I've got like goosebumps right thinking about it. So is really basically my mom's side of the family kind of propelled the musical thing, and she was super into opera, and we listened to Met broadcasts. Growing up in Oklahoma City, I think we had like 3 classical stations at one time. I mean, people think that it's nothing but tumbleweeds, but I always tell people it's like, Oklahoma's kind of a nouveau state, and people wander around a lot. It's not like people just appeared out of the ground from Oklahoma. They, it's our little hometown, Oklahoma City, has a basketball team now, an NBA team. It's crazy. Before long, it'll probably have a baseball team and a football team. I have no doubt. I mean, what is it, the 25th largest city in the United States now? I mean, but pretty soon, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Dallas, Fort Worth is all going to be one big metroplex anyway. So there's that. Okay, Bob, reel yourself back in. So, my oldest sister, was an excellent cellist as well, and her name is Mary. She lives in Tulsa. She's a dental hygienist. That's another story I'd like to share. It's something that happened later. I used to wander into her practice area, and she'd set me on her lap. I couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old, and she would help me play, and I like took to it like really naturally. It just, everybody in my family played a string instrument. That's just how it went. My dad also came from a family of woodwind and brass players, and they're actually quite well known in Quebec, the Gagné family. My dad's mother was a Gagné, and she was actually a good pianist, and apparently my grandfather played the squeeze box. I never got to hear him do that, but yeah, so I took cello in grade school as well. I think 3rd grade was when they had 3rd or 4th grade. I think it was 3rd grade. We could choose an instrument, and the cello kind of chose me. My mom wanted me to play the double bass, and I said, "Are you kidding? I'm not carrying that thing around. The cello's big enough." So I was carried my little half-size cello around, and Lowell Russell was our string teacher. And the very first week that I played, I think I was 8 or 9. I didn't have a private teacher yet. I just had been learning at home with Mary, and Mary had been quite a good teacher. And my mom would come in and bark things at me because my mom would like to take credit for everything. But it was really Mary, because I wanted to do everything she did. We shared a bedroom. I was a baby. She was 10 years old. She raised me. She was my mommy, and we kind of look alike. I mean, imagine a pretty version of me with blonde hair. That's my sister. So my sister Mary is she was my first musical inspiration. And my sisters all listened to, rock and roll. So I used to listen to, of course, the Beatles, the Steve Miller Band and Styx. And my sister introduced me to Frank Zappa. So I had opera coming in one ear, and then, the Beatles and all those other things coming in the other ear. And I had quite an eclectic, musical upbringing, and, perfect pitch, synesthesia. I didn't even know those things had names. It's like I had all that, and I didn't know there was a name. Like synesthesia was a thing until I was like 40. Honestly, I didn't know the whole pitch color thing, and I know that's not limited to that, but it's and I don't even know how it's helpful. I mean, Scriabin. Anyway, we can get into that another time. Here we go again. Got to get the fishing line back in. Okay. So Lowell Russell said, we got to get this kid to Jane Smith, the finest cello teacher around. And Jane, I remember the very first day I went to her house, I was terrified. I played for her, and she's like, "Yep, I'm taking him." And it was, she was like another mom to me. And it's hard for me to talk about Jane without, getting emotional. We lost touch for a very long time, and I reconnected with her, and I have her cello now. And she used to loan me that cello for every competition that I did, and every audition. It's a modern Italian cello that was actually made in San Diego by an Italian, but it says made in Venice because he was from Venice. Iago Petronella was the name of the maker, and that's one of my most treasured possessions. I had a lot of trouble tracking her down, actually. She had been asked for a quote by the Detroit Free Press for something, and they got in touch with her, and we're now semi-regularly in touch. It's hard because um it was a very difficult situation with my parents, and without going into too much detail, it was rough growing up. you know um you can imagine, like, I mean, I grew up Catholic, altar boy, you know not the nicest priests. Wink wink. We won't get too much into that. But I was also very involved in the music in the church as well. So I learned a lot about sacred music from the organist there, and I learned a thing or two about playing keyboard, and in fact, I had to practice piano at church because my dad could not stand having noise in the house. He just so often I had to practice cello in the garage, but I didn't mind because it was boomy out there and I liked the acoustics. And I could imagine I was playing in a concert hall. So right there, I was already, like, in my early teens, and even before then, I was doing this like practice of creative visualization. I just had this crazy imagination that was propelled more by a desire to be famous, to, like, oh wow, I'm gonna be this, like, great musician someday. But at the same time, music possessed me, in a way that's very hard to describe. It was like baseball then became over here. I mean, I knew I was never going to be a great baseball player because those guys are freaks of nature, and I was a decent baseball player, but nothing like anything that would a scout would even look at. But I was a catcher. That was my position. I loved it so much, and I was good. I was a terrible batter, though. Oddly, I was terrified of baseballs coming at me when I didn't have any gear on. I was like, can I, like, go up there with all my catcher's stuff on? My catcher's mask. Can you imagine? Anyway, I'm meandering so much. So yeah. Help me get back to where you want me to be.
Okay. So actually by age 12, you had been accepted a couple places.
Yeah, I was accepted at well, Leonard Rose wanted me to come study with him at Juilliard. I had played for him at Eastern Music Festival, and he had only, I think, recently been diagnosed with leukemia. He had beaten kidney cancer like a couple decades before that. I think he only had one kidney, but he then grew quite ill, and I spent a little bit of time at Juilliard with him, and a little bit of time at Curtis. But my dad had other sort of plans for me. I mean, he wanted me to follow in his footsteps. He wanted me to go into the military. He wanted me to go ROTC and, do man stuff, And I mean, my dad's people were like pretty hard scrabble. They crossed over, some of them illegally, from Canada. They crossed over the St. Lawrence and changed their names and assimilated. And, here I am changing it back to what it used to be. I grew up Bobby Maine, and the surname actually should be, it's right here. It should be deMaine.
Oh.
But I didn't want dumb in my in my last name because people tease me enough already. But no, I mean, you not believe the roasting I get for changing my name back. But it's for a good reason. It's not for vanity at all. My grandmother's family, their surname was Gaines, but it was Gagne across the border. So La Roque became Rock. So I'm really super into that stuff. And my mom's family came through Ellis Island and then the port of Baltimore as well. And then to Chicago, and where she grew up. So yeah. You were saying, Ben?
The other place besides Leonard Rose when you were 12 that had accepted you, weren't there? There were two options. Am I remembering correctly?
Oh, Geneva and Paris, Paris Conservatory. There was a definite possibility of me going to study with Andre Navarra. I mean, it was all happening so quickly that like these teachers, they saw raw material, so young, ready to go, and it just didn't happen. My dad was, as I remember, Leonard Rose was the one who really impressed my dad the most out of all the teachers that were in contact with my family. He was kind of a man's man, and my dad, they smoked cigarettes together. They talked behind a closed door, and my dad was about I think 10 years younger than Leonard Rose. My dad was born in 1928 and Leonard Rose was born, I think, in 1918. And so I think he looked at Rose as like a big brother type, and Rose could sense this. And it's hard for me to talk about this because I feel like I'm bragging or patting myself on the back, and I'm really not. It's just, things happened as they were supposed to. And my parents thought it was better for me to finish my secondary school at home. And, I in defiance, I sort of just quit the cello. Jane dropped me as a student because she's like, I can't teach you. Your mom is too difficult. They won't buy you a nice cello. They could not see music as an honorable profession. Even though my mother was so, I never got a compliment from my mom. And I would hear her brag about me, to other people. And I was like, I felt really good about that, but never, ever, ever would she say, good job, attaboy, that kind of stuff. And it was one time that and this is a decent story that's kind of a little off the path. I was really proud of a particular live recital that I had done. And I brought the CD to my mom's place, and she was living in a convalescent home in New Haven. I had brought her with me to Connecticut to try to take care of her. I failed miserably at that, but so I brought the CD and I said, Mom, I just recorded this recital of this European cellist. I was trying to fool her. I said, you've got to hear this. You've got to hear this guy or girl, whatever I said. So I put the CD on, and she listened. It's the Casado Suite. And after like 5 seconds, she looks at me and she goes, that's you. And she winked. And I mean, it just melted me. Like, that was like the greatest thing I ever received from my mom. And it was like, okay, I'm good. It's so weird because, I know I talk about my mom a lot. My mom had sort of untreated mental illness. And finally, when she was so sick in the nursing home, she had several strokes and she was belligerent and difficult. Finally, she was diagnosed, I believe, bipolar. And when she got her medication, she became like a little lamb. It was amazing. It was like too little, too late. But I don't know how much of this is going to be valid in the cello podcast. But I'm very open about it because I inherited all of it. I'm bipolar 1. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I self-medicated for over two decades. I pretended to be sober for 15 years. I was popping pills the whole time. Now I'm sober. 5 years.
Congratulations.
And I crashed and burned here in LA. I was supposed to perform a concerto, and I was doing too much. I was teaching full time at Colburn. I was performing too many string quartet concerts with the NS Quartet, and I had taken several recitals and a few concerto dates. I could not keep up with it all, and I turned to my old habits again, and I got in trouble. I mean, and I couldn't function, and so I went into rehab for a month, and I got better, and I've been in therapy ever since, and I've been with the right doctors and medication, and I think the stigma needs to be removed from mental illness, and also with the trend of things today with they talk about privilege, like take 10 steps ahead if you were raised in a family with two parents. Well, they don't say we were raised in a family with two parents. One was bipolar and the other one was alcoholic. They don't say any of that. They don't go into that. All these sensitivity training courses that they waterboard us with every year, and I've been speaking up, not so vociferously, but I think it's time to acknowledge that there are other things that affect people of all colors and creeds, and I'm not really into the identity politics thing so much. It's driven me so crazy, and I know this doesn't have anything to do with cello.
No, but
I am.
Go ahead.
I am an advocate for helping people who are underprivileged, of course. And I've done a lot of that. And I did a lot of it before all of this started. And I was very aware of that. And anyway, I don't want to get myself into trouble. I know you don't want to get me in trouble either.
No,
do you?
My brain now is heading towards what it must have been like. I mean, you and Christian Ellenwood were roommates, right?
See, I'm politically, I've been on both sides. I've been super red, I've been super blue.
No,
and
I'm thinking more just the creativity of your two minds.
Christian, I mean, we're so alike, but yet we're so completely different. I mean, he's a more sentimental being than I am. I'm more cynical, I think. Maybe.
Okay, so that was
I'm a deeply religious person, and he's not. But I can't speak for him, but I suspect that we are very opposite in that way. But anyway, that's just. I mean, I love Christian. He is just so oddly, he's got the name Christian. I love him so much, though. That guy, I can't imagine my life without him in it. He got me through my first year at Eastman, when my dad passed away from cancer. That was a bad year, and luckily, I mean, I'd gotten into the Rochester Philharmonic as a sub that year, and I got some work that way, and I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I'm sorry, what the hell I was doing. That was the first audition that I took, and I pissed off a lot of people. They were like, how'd this kid get this job? But I had a very good coach, Kathy Murphy Kemp. Wonderful teacher, one of the best teachers that I ever had. Again, another unsung hero. Steve Doan and Paul Katz and all those guys are unbelievable teachers in their own way, but they're not starters. They're not the starters.
And
And
that's
I want to, you could write a whole book in praise of the starters. And I couldn't do it. I could not be a starter. There's no way. I don't have the patience for it. I am the guy that people come to for finishing touches before an audition. I'm that guy. I love doing that. That's my favorite way of teaching, which is really just coaching. I'm not teaching you how to play the instrument. And many teachers don't make that distinction. And many teachers only coach, but yet they call themselves teachers.
that's very
I think that they're, I mean, Starker made that point, and that was something I very easily grasped because I can teach you how to play the cello, and I can, but I'm better at teaching you how to play it better. I from square one, no, I'm not good. I've tried. I have zero patience for it, So anyway, man, I don't know if we're getting anything done here.
Then so you studied.
I have all the time in the world, by the way. I'm not in a hurry. So
Great. And you studied with just kind of a who's who of many of the other
I've been around.
big names in cello teaching, like you just listed. And then after graduating, got the principal position at Hartford before a decade at Detroit. It was at least
Well, the Hartford job I got while I was in school at Yale, and that was a way to sort of pay the bills. And I was ready to go bartending or get a job as a waiter. I had brought my mom with me to New Haven, Connecticut, to take care of her because she needed, around the clock, somebody to help her because she had trouble walking and, taking care of herself. And that was an unmitigated disaster. I mean, that was just not anything I'd ever recommend. Oh boy. If anything qualifies me for sainthood. Anyway, no, I could have done a lot better. And look, the way I talk about my mom, it's like I feel like I'm disrespecting her. I love my mom. She it's because of her that I exist, first of all. And also, I think a significant amount of like epigenetics comes from her. And I feel very close. What's weird is like I told you about the woodworking stuff. I have a knack for that. I made 2 bridges for that cello behind me.
Wow.
They kind of suck.
No,
but they're not as good as like, my guys out here, like Jeff Muller and Eric Benning and that company. I'm in good company out here. Mario Morales also is a splendid instrument maker, but yeah, I made a Belgian and a French bridge from scratch. Each one took me about 7 hours, and the backache I had after that was just. But I made top nut. I also made the saddle, and I've carved various things. It's weird. My youngest sister, who's 7 years older than me, Donna, she lives in Tampa, outside Tampa. She's a visual artist, and she is the most talented person in our family. She is just by far. It's unfortunate that like her work is probably going to get recognized after she dies, like 200 years from now. It'll be like, what the hell is this? This is fucking brilliant. I mean, she was supposed to go to the Chicago Art Institute, and instead she helped put her fiance through, they got married. She got married right out of high school. She helped put him through veterinary medical school, and then they got divorced. So yeah, things happen, but she's still stuck with it. She's so gifted. I wish I could show you some of her stuff. It's in the other room, but anyway.
We'll have to put that link up too, if she has a website.
She does. I'm trying to think of what the name of it is.
We'll look it up.
She's got something on Instagram. It's cool. I'm like barely on Instagram. I don't even remember my password. So I, on occasion, I just sort of lurk on Instagram and just see what other people are doing. And I'm like, I probably should. I don't really. My ambitions are different now. It's like I just want to be. I want to be the best I can be.
Yeah, that takes time.
And also, it's about elevating the music for me, and I don't want to cultivate the type of audience that is just like based on likes and based on a 10-second you know crudely put together little video. I can't, I can't with that, as my daughter would say. It's
So
sus.
after Yale, it was straight to Detroit.
No, I was I I was at Yale, and then I was briefly at University of Connecticut. They had given me a stipend to work on a DMA out there, which I didn't finish. But I was working in the Hartford Symphony. I was there for about 10 years. And then I won the job in Detroit. And I was at the point in my life where if I wasn't going to win an audition, I was going to switch gears and maybe try to go to med school or something. That's the significance of one of my tattoos I have in my arm. If I weren't a cellist, I'd probably be a doctor. By the time I'm 70, finish my residency by the time I'm 80, and finish paying my student loans by the time I'm 236. I know that stuff fascinates me as much as like family history, and it's because I had an autoimmune disease that is very tricky to treat, and sounds like Halloween. Sorry. So partially my instincts were to like study immunology and stuff like that, I had these dreams of becoming like this great diagnostician like Dr. House. But that's another life ago. Yeah, exactly. Hugh Laurie is amazing. So yeah, I did end up getting the job in Detroit, and they put me through my paces for that audition. Boy, did they ever. And I came out on the other side of the curtain when they said, you've got the job, and like half the orchestra's sitting out there, and they were like, hey, do you like the hall? The hall is incredible in Detroit. It's like first of all, it looks like the inside of a wedding cake. It's so beautiful. And then you play in there, and it's one of the greatest halls I've ever played in. It's like up there with Symphony Hall in Boston, Carnegie, Severance. I mean, Severance is possibly the greatest hall in the US, but I don't know. It's hard to say. It's like there's so many great ones. But Detroit Orchestra Hall is just phenomenal. And they said, what do you think of it? I said, oh man, it's like driving a Ferrari. Oh, sorry, I mean a Cadillac. So I had to be really careful. But boom.
Right.
Once I turned 50, like jokes like that I tell weren't funny anymore. Maybe they were never funny.
No,
50 was like when I stopped being funny and became like everything's a dad joke.
And then Detroit had as a symphony, had their issues, and you ended up in LA.
Well, I mean, that was another kind of convoluted story. They had the strike, the work stoppage, and I lucked into some really great work. I was a sort of deputy principal cellist in the Bergen Philharmonic in Norway, and also in the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra. And I also did a few weeks in the Toronto Symphony, but that was before as a guest principal. And I thought about each city and like what it would be like, and each one was tantalizing. Bergen, wow, it would be great to bring my family to Europe. I had taken the Concertgebouw audition and was last man standing a couple times and wasn't offered the job or whatever. I don't know exactly what happened, but they didn't like me enough. So that was right before, and also I had auditioned for the cello position in a well-known string quartet, and I was a runner-up for that. I was like always the bridesmaid, never the bride. I had taken several other principal auditions. It was like very specific. I wanted to do that. And that was the career path that I wanted. I didn't want to be in the back of the section because one tends to get typecast in this world. And I wanted to stick with what I knew. And I got good at it really fast in Hartford. I never expected, what I really wanted to do was play solo concerts and chamber music and make my living doing that. And I had a manager in New York, and I was off and running doing a lot of that when I lived in New England. But it didn't take off. It didn't take off for me. I had a few problems I needed to sort out over the next 20 years. And luckily I did. So I flew to LA after the strike resolved, and I came back to my job after they lost all their other string principals. I came back to my job in Detroit. And then during that season, we were going to be performing and recording John Williams' cello concerto with Leonard Slatkin. And so the week before that happened, I had already submitted my resume to the LA Phil, many weeks before that, and I was accepted into the audition, and I was invited into the semifinals. So they invite people from bigger jobs into they get to skip the prelims. Mm-hmm. And but so the week before that happened, 2 weeks before that happened, it was the concerto, and so I flew to LA to play for John Williams at his house. And that was surreal, getting, ding dong, John Williams answers the door. It's like, hi, Mr. Williams. Just like, it's like I met, oh my God, I met Patrick Stewart the other day. It's crazy. It's like you bump into celebrities all the time out here. And I was at a function, and he's there, and he like comes over to me, like I'm like, oh my God, like maybe somebody's behind me that he knows. No, he's coming over to me. He wanted to compliment me on my playing. I couldn't think of his name. I was like, thank you, Mr. Picard.
No, you didn't.
I did. And that and I oh my God. I might have said Captain Stewart. I was so flustered. I was truly starstruck by that. And the fact that he said he was impressed by my playing, I was like, that made my year, man. I mean, like, wow, another fellow Baldy. That guy's tall. I mean, well, anybody's tall for me. I'm 5'8" on a good day. And he's at least 5'10". I didn't know he was that tall. But all those Hollywood people, they wear lifts. And look, I got my Hollywood phony now too. I got my teeth straightened. I got that Invisalign stuff, so
they look great.
Well,
so you
handsome was never the hard part.
You played the concerto back in Detroit, though.
Oh yeah, you're reeling me back in, right? Okay,
sorry.
Yeah. So no, that's fine. Let me wet my whistle.
Yeah.
So in Detroit, we had 4 performances, and then we cobbled together. There was one that they decided to, base it on, and then they did some edits, and we re-recorded the ending, so there's no applause. I was like, they should leave the applause in. That's the best part. It's like, she was more like, no. So I got John Williams' blessing, and it was fun when I was in his living room, and there was one part where it was kind of confusing that the second movement is a very jazzy movement. And I needed like somebody to mark time for me. And I said, would you mind conducting this part? And he said, no. Because there was his rehearsal pianist came to play with me. We had rehearsed that morning at UCLA, and I was so stressed out. I was pouring sweat. I was so damn nervous. Because I cram learned this concerto. I mean, I shouldn't admit that. But with all the stuff that I do, it's like it's part and parcel of how I prepare, and I've done that my whole life. I've just sort of waited till the 11th hour and then gotten my best work done, that way. Be it ever thus. So I got his blessing, but when he was conducting that part, I said, I kind of looked at him. I said, "So now, can I say that I soloed with John Williams conducting?" We had a good laugh over that. That was really really funny. But we had met before. He had conducted in Detroit, and I had played his Sayuri's theme, and he arranged Schindler's List for cello. It's really hard. It's like yikes. It's really difficult. But we ended up recording is Sayuri's theme for the LA Phil 100th, whatever, the John Williams CD on DG, which is pretty cool. And I did that one on the Strad, the LA Phil Strad, and that's my Viome behind me.
Okay,
Part of it. So that's another great story that was bought for me by a wonderful lady in Detroit, and the most generous person I've ever met. She deserves a mention here. I mean, she's as important to me as Jane and my sister. Her name is Cecilia Benner, and she provided funding for a couple of the recordings that I've made. As far as my website, you had mentioned it before, I haven't updated that in probably like 10 years. I need to get on it. I've got to get on it. I was waiting to lose some weight, get some new clothes, get new photos. I'm too lazy. I got to get on it. But the thing that's great is that my playing keeps improving, and I'm happy about that. And I work hard, and my job keeps me in really, really tip-top shape, first of all. And I've learned how to say the word no. I used to say yes to everything that came my way because I was a hoarder. Like I said, no one else is going to get my gig. And there's power in no too, because then you become maybe a little bit more desirable that way. I don't know. There's something to it, but I just needed to slow down and improve the quality and not the quantity of what I did, and reflect on how I was doing things, and the why as well. Why am I doing this? Why am I pushing myself so hard? I don't get any enjoyment when I do that. And as much as I loved playing in my quartet, with James and Amy and Richard, I was just coming unwound in every way, and they deserved better from me, and I couldn't anymore. And so I resigned from the quartet, and then they got Eddie Aaron to replace me, and he's awesome. I love Eddie. I mean, we're all friends. I mean, it's, maybe there's some wounds that are still healing. I broke up with the quartet via text message. But since then, everything has gotten better. So, I hope that you'll edit some of this stuff out. Otherwise, this is like a tell-all. This is like Days of Wine and Roses here. I didn't see, Ben. I have a lot of trouble turning my filter to like 5 at least. It's on 0. And there's nothing I won't divulge. I think once I started hardcore therapy, 3 times a week, hemorrhaging money. But I look at it this way: it's an investment in myself. It's an investment in my family, my children, and whom I adore above all, and my wife. And marriage is not a walk in the park. So we've had our challenges, and we're getting through it. You're married, right, Ben?
Yes.
How many kids do you have?
I have 2, like you.
Just like, and what were their ages?
They're 18.
Wait, you have twins?
Yes.
Oh my God, really? Are they identical?
No, fraternal.
Boy, girl, or
2 boys.
Oh wow, but I bet they do look a lot alike.
Yeah, a fair amount. And you have a boy and a girl?
Yeah, Paul is about to go to college. He's just gotten accepted at like 8 or 9 different colleges, but he's really hoping to get accepted at either UW-Madison, his mother's alma mater, or Indiana, which, I mean, both of them are great music schools, and he plays the French horn really well. He takes after his mom. He's got that gene. Definitely got it, but it doesn't light a fire under him. And I think he recognizes how hard it's been for his dad. Like I have a separate place. I have a studio in downtown LA, and we also have a house in South Pasadena. And that's, they have great schools there. And I have my piano, my harpsichord, you can see behind me, that music that's multiplied. There are 3 more sets of those bookshelves in this room. And that other thing, that's a shower curtain. that's the closet door.
Nice.
With the Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas
Yes.
poster above it. Yeah, I love Ralph Steadman, but and I love art. I mean, I'm surrounded by art, as you can see here. I love those old posters, advertisements, Capiellos and such. And I just can't get enough of it. This place is like, it looks like Amazon vomited on the walls. None of it's original, but
Bob, if I may, I want to talk to you about that audition process. I have a couple of thoughts that I want to ask you about. One of them is, preparing things to a high level is a discipline that I think a lot of people who do or have walked the earth just kind of never experienced, to get to that incredibly rarefied air. But then the other thing that I want to ask about, maybe I'll start here, is that there are people who just only have so much resilience for being disappointed, and it's not, hey, I remember growing up, once we heard that, when I was in 9th grade, and I heard that there was a 9th grader who got principal cello of the all-state orchestra.
Oh, and not a senior?
But you have to, that cannot prevent you from trying again. You referred earlier, when we were first talking about treating those as learning experiences, which I think is so much healthier than just trying to have to tell yourself, well, that's just their judgment, and I know how good I am, and try to use kind of willpower to get through it. But you treat them as learning experiences, each audition. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first of all, I learned to not ever take an audition to just win the job. I mean, yeah, you want to win the job. I mean, who's kidding whom? But the main prize, the brass ring there, is the improvements in your playing. Because inevitably, when you get yourself into audition condition, which is what I call like the sort of being at the, like, right at the peak of Everest, where the winds are just blowing you around, and it's so hard to like maintain like that flag that banner that you're gonna put this, like, I made it up here. It's very different from base camp. Base camp's pretty high up, right? But the summit of a mountain is a very different animal. Unless you're Wim Hof or whoever that guy is that does it shirtless, then it's easy. But or like George Carlin said, like, if Mount Everest is so hard, why does everybody go up the easy side or something like that? I probably mangled that, but anyway, and that applies to us too, because a lot of people end up going up the hard side. Like Feuermann used to say to students, he'd say, well, you can practice 6 hours your way or 1 hour my way, or whatever he said. Brinton Smith would be able to tell you better, because he knows every word he said verbatim. Yeah, that talk about one that got away. Yeah, 39 when he died. Auditions, getting to that rarefied, that I guess stratosphere. There's always a level above that, and there's another level above that. You remember when you were a kid, and I say this a lot to people I coach, when you were a kid and you started getting better at the instrument, like the next day, you couldn't wait to get the cello out of the case to see like if you could play better, and you were better. Like I had this like corduroy zipper brown ugly like bag, and I would get it out of the case, and then I would pick it up, and it's like, this is fun. Like I was getting really, really good. And actually my dad started paying attention. He's like, it's not bad, he's like, well, play some Hank Williams on that, you know. And I try to harness that in other people, because you remember that, right, Ben? Like how when it started being fun, and those little, like those plateaux were really rapid. Okay. And I look at it like a spiral staircase, almost like, a strand of DNA or something like going up. It's like a spiral staircase. And those steps, they start to get bigger, like as you get into your teens and 20s. And when I hit about 28, I stopped getting better. Like I wondered, like, it's like, I wondered, like they always told me I was a prodigy growing up, okay. I was an early bloomer. That's how I looked at myself. And, I could do everything I can do now when I was probably 11 or 12. Up and down bow staccato, play well in tune, all that stuff. And I wondered if I was like, God, am I just like a really rapidly growing pine tree that reaches a finite height, while all these slow growing redwoods are going to surpass me someday? And they started to. And that's when I started to panic. And, and I was drinking a lot. I was dealing with nerves that way, anxiety. And then I reached out to an old teacher in my mid-20s, and he's passed away now. His name is Luis Garcia Renart, another one of the most important teachers in my life. He taught at Bard College, and he was one of Pablo Casal's later students in his later life. He was a Catalonian-born Mexican cellist who, and his sister Marta is thought to be like the Rudolf Serkin of Mexico. I mean, she's an amazing pianist. I got to play a recital with her in San Miguel de Allende back in 1990 when I still had hair, and he resuscitated me. And the first time I played for him, he said, I played the first movement of Dvorak. He said, "You sound angry." I said, "I am angry. I should have all this stuff. I should have this. I should have that." He so gently gave me everything I needed to bring me back to a centered place. And it was right after that I won Detroit.
Wow.
Right after that. And I was off to the races. And all the great, wonderful things started happening after that. James Ennis invited me. James had Toby Sachs, God bless her, she's gone now, but she ran the Seattle Chamber Music Festival Society summer festival. She was the founder of it, and she handed it over to James a few years before she passed away, and James runs it now. But I went there. I mean, I've taken a couple of years off, but I've been going there since 2005. That was my first year. And yeah, I've been going there for 18 years now. Crazy to think that, because I think my first summer was James's 18th year, if I'm not mistaken. So he had already been going for a very long time. Like he was practically a child when he first went. And I'm lucky that I got, James is another one of the most important people in my development. I he's a great friend, but I happen to like worship him at the same time. He's a genius in disguise. He's just a regular, nice, like ordinary guy in so many ways, but he is possibly the smartest human being I've ever met. possibly. Anyway, not surprising, right? Yeah, his IQ is definitely above room temperature. Mine, not so sure. But anyway, I have so many other interests outside music that I think prevent me from being super duper focused on what I do. But I think they do enrich my musical experience a lot. And I don't know. It's hard to make sense of it all sometimes. But coming back to what we were saying about learning from our audition experience, you have to learn to take criticism for what it is. It might not really mean, you might not get criticism from, you might not get feedback from the jury, or they might have a person in mind that they want, and they're going to hire that person no matter what. I mean, it might not be fair and square. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. You don't know. Most of the time it is. I mean, am I bitter about a few things? No, I used to be, but things have worked out quite nicely for me. I've learned more, I think, about the auditions that I've lost, about my own playing, about how I've handled myself on stage. When I auditioned for Principal Cello in Cleveland, I thought that was some of the best cello playing I'd ever done. And I because I learned at that audition, I figured I had no skin in the game. Like, oh, there's no way I'm going to win this. So I went out there. I was actually going to drive home before I went on stage. I was going to chicken out, and I went into the personnel manager's office, Carol Lee Ayotte, and I said, I'm just going to go. She said, please don't go. Please play. The committee wants to hear you. So I went out and I crushed it. Like, I played great, and it was like, okay. And I felt something different that time. And I had that feeling in Detroit. I had also had that feeling when I won the Irving Klein competition. Incidentally, in that competition, I had a memory slip in the first round in my Bach prelude. And I stopped and I said, okay, I've reached a fork in the road. I could either walk off stage and go home, or I could just start over. I started over, and it was like another spirit came in my body. I was like bulletproof at that point. I played like I've never played in my life. I remembered, and this is funny because I had a memory slip when I was 11 years old playing Boccherini Cello Concerto, and I have it memorialized on a Betamax cassette, believe it or not. We were the only people in Oklahoma with a Betamax. Renting a movie, $50. My dad won it in his insurance company. He was former military, and then he was an insurance representative for like 19 different companies. And he also was an estate planner, and I think he did some CPA work, but he was qualified to do all that. He was a good numbers guy. And he won this thing for some like underwriting all these policies or whatever. So the thing arrived. It was like, it weighed like, it was as much as like 2 anvils. It was so heavy. And we put it thunk on top of our console TV. You remember those?
Yes.
The thing, I don't even think it had a remote. I think you had to get up and change the channel. But I was the only one that used that damn thing, and I would record Itzhak Perlman, Leonard Bernstein. Anytime that anybody was on the Tonight Show, or Leonard Bernstein would connect the Vienna Philharmonic, we'd have a blank tape, and I would put it. My mom brought me blank tapes, and now it's all on YouTube.
Yeah.
Everyone's so spoiled. It's so, if YouTube existed when I was that young, I would never leave the house. Amazing. I think a lot of people don't leave the house. So coming back to
memory slip with
that. Yeah. So I have that memorialized on tape, and it's not that bad, but when it happened, it was as though the earth stopped twirling on its axis. I mean, everything came crashing down, because before that, I didn't have a worry in the world. And then I had that memory slip, and then I began to question everything I did. Like, everything was easy for me, and then everything became incredibly hard to do in front of other people. So I had been trying to figure that out ever since. And then when I had the thing happen in the client competition, it was like a nice closure to that situation. That was only like, what was that, 9 years later? But I still worry about memory slips, but the best antidote for nerves and memory slips and all that stuff is preparation. That's beta blockers, this, other medications. Try practicing. That's the best way. I would have nerves of steel if I practiced like 8 hours a day or healthfully. I mean, you should never practice what you're already good at doing, because that's bad for your, synapses or whatever. I don't know how to explain it. Yeah. Glad I'm not your neurosurgeon, right? Anyway, so I learned a lot from those two experiences in terms of like almost like closing the circle. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I would say I've learned more from quote unquote failures than successes, because successes, you just kind of like, wow, I'm set, I'm going to the top or whatever. But my parents, I think in some ways raised me right. I mean, they always taught me to be humble and I think some people mistake my confidence when I'm playing the cello for arrogance, and I'm the first one to shit on myself. Believe me. But when I'm playing, it's all business. I'm not. There's nothing else in the world that's getting in my way. And I'm all in. I'm opting all in when I'm doing it. So, trying to think of, I've taken, I think, about 10 orchestra auditions in my life, which is not very many. And I've won about just over half of them. And I see twice in Concertgebouw did not get the job, but came close. Buffalo came close. What else? Cleveland twice. So how many is that? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Philly 6. So that's 6 I didn't win. The first time in Detroit, I overslept for the finals.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I don't talk about that too much. That was really bad. I could have had the job 2 years before I got it. But as it was, I was still kind of a kid when I got the job. I was just over 30, and I had a lot to learn in terms of like handling other people, handling criticism, because I had this skin. I had like paper thin skin. I mean, it was like see-through. And boy, did a lot of people throw darts at me, but I handled it. I learned. I get thickened my skin when I was there. It was the best thing for me. They threw me to the wolves. I had 3 people that surrounded me who were the oldest people in the section. There was a guy in his early 70s, Mario. Marcy, who was the acting principal cellist, she was associate. Wonderful musician. I mean, frighteningly talented. Great pianist, great cellist. She had a Gofriller and a Ruggieri.
Wow.
It's like, oh, do I take the Range Rover or the Mercedes? It's like, So, and here's me with my like modern American cello. It sounded pretty good. I won my audition on it, and they were putting some pressure on me to get something a little what they thought was that they thought was sexier. But hey, they thought I was playing a Gofriller when I won the audition. They said, "What are you playing?" I lied and I told them it was a Gofriller. And the guy that made the cello, he was upset by that. He said, "Why didn't you tell him he wasn't going to give the cello back to me?" That's another story. John Van Couwenhoven is one of the most brilliant makers alive. I mean, he's still making in Hartford, and he is up there with James Ennis in terms of like creativity and genius, and he's funny too. He's just like, all these really genius people are very funny, I think.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I don't know if that covers too much, but you know, like a failed audition for young concert artists too. Like, you know, I learned, you know, sometimes they know who's going to win maybe before the audition even happens. Or, you know, again, like with young concert artists guild, I made the finals of that once and didn't get it. But you know, I would mope and I would cry and I would, you know, punch the wall and I would have a temper tantrum and feel sorry for myself. But it's like at the end of it all, I would ask myself, I'd say, so what are you going to do? Are you going to quit? What are you going to do? Quit? No, you're going to pick yourself back up and you're stronger because of it. Clearly. What did Nietzsche say? I mean, I guess which doesn't kill me makes me stronger. I guess so. You know, I think it might add up.
But you know, there's some of the points that you've already made, the degree to which sometimes people let themselves think, oh, well, maybe somebody else was already predestined to be selected for that, you know, that sour grapes is probably,
Yeah.
you know, or being thinnest skinned towards their own criticism, you know, beating themselves up more than anything else. But so it's not just that you got back up and dusted yourself off and practiced more, but you knew how to practice to keep getting things to that just incredibly polished and reliable level.
Ben, it dawned on me just real fast. Sorry to interrupt you, but before I forget to say it did dawn on me that and fairly recently it was kind of an epiphany through therapy. It's like nobody can hurt me like I can hurt myself. You know, nobody can criticize me to the level that I'm capable of. It's like people say stuff about me, talk smack. It's like, all right, no, you know, you're probably right. Because I just, you know, it doesn't hurt me. It doesn't affect me anymore. It's like water off a duck's back, you know. And part of that is like some good friends of mine from Detroit. My friend Dave Everson, he's been like the big brother I never had. He's thickened my skin by roasting me every time he sees me. He kind of introduced me to bro code. You know, that guy, he's one of the best people on earth. I love that guy. But typical brass player. Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
no,
go back to your.
Yeah, if I may ask, I mean, you said, what was the expression you used about the high-level baseball players, freakishly good or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know if you had applied your approach that you have used in practicing the cello to practicing being the best catcher possible. What makes you think you would not have been able to have joined the rarefied air in the baseball world?
Because I'm not a gifted athlete. I think I mean, what Leon Fleischer always says, that, you know, musicians are athletes of the small muscles.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's more me. You know, I mean, I was a good athlete. I was not professional athlete material ever. You know, I was not a fast enough runner. I was not, you know, I had asthma. So, you know, I had a lot of strikes against me. And you know, it didn't dampen my enthusiasm for it, but I knew in my heart that it wasn't going to happen.
Okay.
So,
but
I think you have to have a fire under you for,
Okay.
for that pursuit, and that's music. I do, and
Okay,
I should say,
having not seen you coach, at the same time, I just guess that if somebody comes to you for those finishing touches before an audition, that if they are thinking to themselves or saying out loud that they don't know that they're gifted in that way, that you as the coach can talk them out of that and get them to still help them win that thing that they're auditioning for.
well, I think a lot of what I do is, and I'm not like Don Green, or like who's the guy that has the new hot website, Japanese name. I'm trying to, very popular. I'll think of it, but he's like sort of like another performance coach, and there are lots of different performers. I wouldn't describe myself as one of those people, but a lot of what I concentrate on is trying to get people in the right mindset, and it's I describe my own experience as an emotional landscape, and if I can compartmentalize the things that prevent me from entering that sort of what you call it, the zone, or whatever it is, where you have flow, where you have this sort of state of grace, or if you watch, if like there's so much cross pollination, like in my thinking with between athletes. Like I make students go watch Michael Jordan videos, or Kobe, or Wayne Gretzky, or even like Tiger Woods. The type of grace with which they play, or like a ballet dancer or a figure skater. Like there is so much to learn from those disciplines, not just listening to Heifetz over and over and over again. You know, there's something to appreciating somebody executing like a perfect, you know, whatever, triple Salchow or whatever it's called. Isn't it spelled the same way as Salchow, the rosin, the bow guy?
Is it?
Isaac. Did he invent that too? I think it's a Swedish surname. Such a nerd. Anyway, not him, me. Well, he might be a nerd too. He's into bows. I mean, look, he'd probably be right up there at the string player nerd fest. Out here, it's like the thing in Anaheim that happens every year. What is it? It's called the NAMM show. Wow, that is something else. That's our Comic-Con.
Nice.
It's spectacular. Yeah, what were we talking about?
All right. Well, thank you again so much. And everybody out there, have fun practicing all weekend, and we'll see you this time next Friday.